when I was growing up, I grew up, kind of on a farm in Indiana. And it belonged to my grandparents originally and then passed to my parents. And as my grandparents' family grew, they just built more houses on the farm. And so my cousins lived in that house, other cousins lived in that house, we lived here, and my grandparents lived in the center. And and kids, there were a lot of kids, lots of kids between all the cousins, our brothers and sisters and me all playing outside when we were little. And my grandmother would lay traps for us because grandmothers love to have a visit of their grandkids. So every day, probably around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my grandmother would bake cookies. Almost every day she would bake cookies. And we knew it. And so we're out playing and stuff like that. But it starts to prey on your mind. There are fresh cookies and grandmas. There's fresh cookies and grandmas. And so finally we come over to get the fresh cookies. And she would talk to us and visit with us and some clever woman to get her grandkids to visit. And when she would talk to me, and see, my family doesn't remember this, but whenever she would talk to me, she'd say, and this one, and she'd point to me, and this one is going to be a priest. And she would say that like every afternoon when we'd come for cookies, and this one is going to be a priest. And I would say, no, I'm not going to be a priest. Because I was raised maybe a few years after Father Patrick. I never had to get underneath the desks during the air raids. But the government was still very afraid that the Soviets had a big head start in the sciences. And so the idea was that government was really pushing scientific education at the younger grades, trying to get all the kids interested in the sciences, get them to become scientists, get ahead of the Soviets eventually, the idea. And I bought into it, so I'd say, no, Grandma, I'm going to be a scientist. Well, what happened? I'm here, ain't I? She started this journey, I think. She planted the seeds. Even though I fought it, she planted the seeds. And when I look back, she's just one of a whole chain of people that brought me to today. And you've heard me talk in other homilies about some of them. Father Roy, the prior at the Cell Point Priory in Arizona when I was an intern. Or Father Francis, who was retired to the novitiate when I was a novice. These people kind of almost like handed me off. One would walk with me for a while, and when their time with me was over, they'd kind of hand me off to the next person, it seemed like. When I look back, and there's a whole, what I call, almost like a spiritual genealogy behind you that leads me to today. And I would suspect that if you look in your own lives, you have the same spiritual genealogy. And I'm wondering if that's what Matthew's getting at when he begins his gospel with the genealogy of Jesus and all these predecessors, all these forebears of Jesus. But I think it's more than just genetic forebears. I think it's also spiritual forebears. These are the famous people of the nation. There's Abraham in here. There's Jacob in here. There's Tamar in here. There's Ruth in here. There's David in here. There's another Jacob in here. There's Zadok, the priest, in here. There's Jeconiah in here. There's Mathan, I presume, of the Maccabean revolt in here. These are spiritual giants of the people. So Matthew is not just giving us a genetic, in fact, probably if we were only to look at it as a genetic genealogy, lineage, it's not going to go anywhere. He puts big gaps in there. During the exile, what happens? No one gets children. There's these big 70-year-old gaps where no children are born. Matthew's smarter than that. I think he's trying to tell us this is the spiritual legacy of the people that has led to this Messiah, this birth, this man Jesus, this Savior. They say, and I know it's to be, like if you go walking in the woods, you will eventually circle back. So you can be certain you're going in the right direction. But after a while, everything starts to look familiar again. And you've gone in a circle. And if you're blindfolded especially, and if you're blindfolded and you're asked to walk in a straight line, very quickly people walk in circles. And if they're swimming, and they're told in a big pool, swim in a straight line, swim to the other side. Oftentimes they don't make it. They hit the sides or they circle back. It's the same with bicycling. Everything. We circle around. We are not going to get there on our own power. And the Lord knows that. It's the same in the spiritual life. And just in the journey of life. If it's just me doing me, I'm going to get nowhere. I'm just going to circle around and wander aimlessly. What the Lord hands you off in your spiritual genealogy of people who care for you, love you, instruct you, teach you, guide you, direct you, help you forward. John of the Cross says, we will only proceed if we proceed in darkness. And I think that's what he's getting at. As long as I need the light, I think I need to do it on my own. I'm going to just circle around. But just to trust, to walk forward with eyes almost shut, knowing that the Lord will take care of me, bring people into my life to keep me moving in a straight line to salvation, to heaven, to glory, to fullness, to God. This is our last day together this year, this semester, and we all wander off in different directions tomorrow. I don't think so. I think we all wander off in the same direction tomorrow. And so there'll be people taking care of us each day, each month, handing us off. Till we return again next semester. We're all heading forward. All heading